Hi, everyone, and welcome to a live chat with Nurse Linda. Today's topic is occupational therapy across the lifespan. Nurse Linda will be hosting two occupational therapists in this joint presentation between the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation's National Paralysis Resource Center and the American Occupational Therapy Foundation to commemorate Spinal Cord Injury Awareness Month in September. I'm now going to turn it over to Linda. Hi, Linda.
Hi, thanks, Kaylee. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm glad you're here today with us. I was thinking about how things have changed over the last almost 2 years, or as I like to say, over the last 35 years that COVID's been around, because it feels like it's been around for that long. But anyway, a lot of positive things have come out lately, and so I hope that everybody is continuing to be safe. If in fact we are coming out of this, or at least starting to come out of this, hopefully, we don't know. You never know when the return to normalcy starts until you look back on it. But hopefully things are heading in that direction, and please continue to be safe and follow all the safety measures, because we don't want to blow it this close to being out of it. So just remember to do that. Today, we're very fortunate to have two occupational therapists that I happen to know both of them, which is coincidence, but these are both experts in their fields. We all know how important OT is to individuals with paralysis, so we're going to get more information about that today. I had the pleasure of meeting both of these ladies through work experience, and also through professional meetings. When I go to meetings, if I see their names on the agenda, I will go to their presentation above all others just to see what they're doing, because they are really on top of it. They both have stellar bodies of work. So first, let me tell you about these ladies. First is MJ Mulcahey, excuse me. She's an expert in pediatrics. So for all of our parents, and because people who are taking care of children. I know we have some people that are working in clinics, pediatric clinics, or in schools that are online today. And so here is our opportunity to talk to an expert and to find out what's going on in pediatrics. Some of the amazing things that she's done, and we can all appreciate this, is that she has taken some of that raw data that's collected from all those tests and assessments and everything that's done, and converted that into practical guidelines for taking care of pediatric individuals. That's just a part of what she does, but that's pretty spectacular. So she's helped develop guidelines for helping take care of children with paralysis. We also have today Kerri Morgan, who's another accomplished person. And one of the things that I particularly find that I like amongst her wide variety of work is her study of movement. And as you know, if you follow Nurse Linda and the blogs and the webinars, activity movement is so close to my heart. So this is important work also. Plus, she is an Olympian. How many Olympic athletes do you know? I know one. Her name's Kerri Morgan. So now that my fangirling is over for both of these ladies, it's time to go ahead and start the program. There will be time for questions. So if you do have a question, put it in the chat box. We will answer those at the end of the session. And with no further ado, we'll start with Kerri's presentation about physical activity. So welcome, Kerri.
Awesome, Linda, so good to see you. Thanks for having us. MJ and I are really excited to share some of our work and some resources. And like Linda said, hello, everyone. I'm Kerri Morgan. I'm going to talk to you today about a topic that I'm really passionate about, and that's physical activity and getting folks with disabilities or spinal cord injuries or paralysis moving the things they can move and moving it regularly. And that's the focus of my work. I'm an occupational therapist and a researcher. So I think you'll see themes of sort of all these experiences through my talk for the next 20 minutes or so. So I'm going to share a little bit about my personal journey, a little bit about my research, and a little bit about resources and things that have been helpful to me that I hope are also helpful to you. So I just wanted to start out by saying that MJ and I are both occupational therapists, like Linda said. And I'm certain probably most of the audience has probably worked with an occupational therapist or knows an occupational therapist or has had some related experience with an occupational therapist. But I just wanted to touch on this briefly because occupational therapists, I think, do way more things than people even realize they do. And so the main focus of what we do is really to help support people, whether they have a new disability or an injury or a chronic health condition, do the things that they want to do in their lives, whatever regular meaningful activities that they do, how to adapt it, how to modify it, how to compensate, but how to live your life the way that you want to live it. And so some of the common things we do is maybe help find technology that might help support you to do it. Maybe help look at your home and figure out home modifications to make it easier for you to get around. Maybe help you think about energy conservation tips so that you can manage your day more efficiently. Maybe it's working with a caregiver and trying to figure out how to efficiently communicate your needs to a caregiver. So there's a whole wide range of things that we do. And you're going to see two things from the talks that MJ and I give. So I'm going to kind of focus on how occupational therapists really view physical activity and exercise as an occupation or something that folks want to do in their everyday lives. So how do we figure out how to address a lot of the barriers that are out there and get people moving? And then MJ is going to really sort of follow up with me and really gives tips related to an area called coaching. And she's going to better define that and give some examples through her research. And I just wanted to mention also that MJ and I are both board members of a foundation called American Occupational Therapy Foundation, which is all about trying to find evidence and build an evidence base so that occupational therapists have the evidence to provide really good interventions and programs to folks with spinal cord injury, as well as folks with maybe other disabilities or other chronic health conditions. And I think you're going to see sort of the importance of evidence in both my talk and MJ's talk. So with no further ado, let's kind of get into my main topic, which is physical activity and exercising. And, you know, I think whether you have a disability or not, prioritizing and making time for and getting the support to do exercise or physical activity or however you define it and want to do it can be challenging. However, I think the barriers are more so evident for people with disabilities or folks with spinal cord injuries. And you can really see that in all the numbers that are out there. So I just put one example on the slide, but it sort of shows evidence that, you know, the blue bar at the top is people without disabilities. So 26% of them aren't engaging versus folks with mobility disabilities, folks that use wheelchairs or have issues walking or ambulating or have partial or full paralysis would be considered in the mobility category. And you can see by far less people in the red bar for mobility disabilities are engaging in physical activity. So why is that, right? Well, there's a lot of documented barriers for people with spinal cord injury or disabilities to engage in physical activity. And this is just some of them, but they range from motivation and energy, which I think are pretty common things, whether you have a disability or not. But then you really get into things in the environment that I think really disadvantage people with disabilities when they want to go engage in some level of physical activity. And that's not knowing, but that's things like not knowing where to go to get the support. That's, I work with a lot of people with spinal cord injury and they tell me, you know, I know I'm supposed to exercise. I have no idea how to or where to even find the supports to do it. And then a common theme also is this access, which is, you know, I either don't have the financial support to do it the way that I want to do it, or I have real issues with transportation and getting places to do what I want to do. So as I kind of go along, I'm going to talk about these barriers and show some resources and things that might be helpful to address some of these barriers. Okay, so why is this so important? So if you look in the research, whether you have a disability or not, it is very well documented that when you move around or you engage in physical activity, that there's a lot of benefits. And there's a lot of work done on folks with spinal cord injury saying that the more you move, the more you engage in physical activity, it's going to address things like your overall endurance level, like your cardiovascular health, even your cognition, your energy, your mood. So people with spinal cord injury, it's been linked that folks with spinal cord injury have lower rates of depression if they're exercising regularly. And also, I think it has a really impact on, I think it's a really good way to build social connections and peer support, as well as increase independence. And so my next slide's this is a little overwhelming, but I'll kind of give an overview here. This is from my research. So this is, we talked to 54 people with spinal cord injuries and asked them, these were all folks that were not currently engaging in any physical activity, but really wanted to, but they wanted help to figure out how to do it. And we asked them their goals. Why do you want to exercise? In the top two rows, I think it's sort of a blue purple color, shaded color, were all themes of things that people said were, I want to get stronger. I want to have better endurance. I want to have better stamina. So all things that I think that you would think are pretty common when you say, why do you want to exercise, right? But then the bottom two rows in the yellow highlights are things that people with spinal cord injury said, I really want to exercise so that I can perform better in my daily life. So I think if I exercise, I can get the endurance and the strength to be able to do my ADLs more independently. Transfers was a really big thing. People wanted to work on the muscles related to transferring so that they could help more in their transfers or be more independent in their transfers. And the list kind of went on. People thought that if they were in better physical condition, that they might be able to do more of their self-care or their dressing independently. Might be able to interact with their children, playing more aggressively, things like that. And so I think it's important here that I think physical activity can help with overall health and some of those benefits, but I think it has a really big impact too on helping people achieve some of the other goals that they're trying to accomplish in their everyday lives. And these, we did a qualitative study, meaning that we talked to folks with spinal cord injury that were successfully working out at a local community center. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. And these folks, I just pulled three of the quotes because I thought it was really important. I think we always say, people with disabilities aren't exercising at the rate they should, and but people want to, and people find it really important, and there are supports and resources out there. And I think these are sort of just three examples of that, but I'll just read the statements from these three people. So my first participant said, doing exercise has always been an important part of my life. I missed it when I couldn't do it. I miss that as much as anything of all the things I lost through injury. The second participant said, so I want to exercise for general health so I can stay around. I think it's important to me because I know being disabled, my deconditioning level is going to be faster than the average person. It's just a sedentary lifestyle. And the third person's referring to after she exercised, she said, I was scared to come out of the house. I used to carry pills and I was scared to exercise. I then lost 40 pounds and discontinued my diabetic medicine after she kind of figured out a physical activity routine for her. So I think it's important to know, I think a lot of people don't know that there are actually physical activity guidelines out there for people with disabilities. So I put two examples up on the slide. Don't get too overwhelmed by them. I'll kind of give you the overall gist of them. But the one on the left is from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And this is a more general health guideline. So it's basically for people with disabilities or chronic health conditions. And it's giving you sort of a range of minutes of activity to target if you want to see health related benefits throughout that week. And so, it's saying anywhere from 150 minutes to 300 minutes, depending upon if you're sort of doing mild to moderate to vigorous physical activity. And I'll show you some examples in the next slide of what all that means. And then also the second bullet recommends that you do strengthening exercises a couple times a week. So folks that do spinal cord injury research said, hey, we need to do better for people with spinal cord injury and really figure out what exercise targets should look like for people with spinal cord injury. And so that's the guidelines that are on the right. And they kind of have this progression. So the orange is if you're sort of new to physical activity and exercising and you're trying to figure it out. And then as you build a routine and get more comfortable, you sort of build up on the spectrum to more of the red color, where you maybe do it more regularly for more minutes, more times a day. But to start out with, the guidelines, and this is all based on evidence, is saying that doing 2 times a week aerobic activity for at least 20 minutes, and then thinking about doing some sort of strength activity 2 times a week. So 3 sets at 10 reps, and then it sort of builds up. So I just wanted everybody to be aware that there's guidelines that are out there. When we talk about moderate to vigorous intensity, there's a whole sort of rating scale on this. This particular measurement looks at an activity from a 6 to a 20. And all the guidelines say where you want your physical activity intensity to be is sort of this moderate to vigorous intensity. And that's highlighted on the slide in green, meaning that if you're doing an activity, you should be rating it on the scale from 12 to 16. So I put some examples up here. If you're doing something light, you're putting minimal or no effort in. If you're doing something maximal, it's almost you're out of breath. You can't catch your breath. It's maximal effort. So you want to be somewhere in between that, where you're maybe breathing a little heavier and your heart rate is increased to the point that it can be, but really thinking about trying to do higher level intensities when you're working out. This again is an overwhelming slide, but this is 9 of my participants that we educated about resources and guidelines for physical activity. And then we track them to see what they did. And these are just some samples of what they did in their everyday life to sort of figure out how to do physical activity. So I put the RPE scale up there. So you can see there was things that folks were doing that were on the lighter end, rated as a 6, participant 1. They were simply trying to play with their kids and take walks and play with their dog for longer periods of time. And that was sort of their starting place. And then you see people doing weights or doing wheelchair boxing in their chair. There was chair yoga. Somebody was doing wheelchair laps. So these were people figuring it out in their own home, in their own community, of examples of things that they could do. I really quick just wanted to give you a little bit about my personal journey. So I've had a disability since the age of 1. I transverse myelitis the day after my first birthday, and impacted my at C6 level. So I have some sensation and movement below C6, but not all of it. So I have weak hand function, weak trunk control. I can move my legs a little bit, but not fully. I had a heck of a time growing up. I had a really supportive family that was really engaged in sports. And it took me a really long time in my life to figure out how to achieve physical activity. It really seemed unattainable to me when I was a kid. And, I'm going to show you the next couple of slides. And these are just things that worked for me. So I think it's all about finding what works for you. So when I found wheelchair sports, it opened up this whole new avenue to me that I just didn't even realize was possible. And the first sport I did, a lot of people with spinal cord injury play wheelchair rugby. And that was the first sport I did. I really did it for fun, to meet people. I had a peer, a friend that kept saying, you have to come check this out. You have to come check this out. So I finally was like, fine, I'll come check this out. And it really showed me that people with disabilities can be physically active in a lot of different ways, and that I wanted to really pursue that on higher levels. So I did get really competitive in wheelchair sports for a long time. I did compete in several Paralympics through wheelchair racing, and that's really when I found those things that helped me find my goals and meet my health goals. And I think, the things that I've sort of learned through my journey is, I was motivated to do it, but I couldn't quite figure out how to do it, and that my goals changed. Like initially it was, I just wanted to meet people. Then it was, I want to socially engage. Then I want some health benefits. Then it was, I want to be elite. And now people ask me, what are you training for now? And honestly, it's just to live my everyday life healthy and be able to keep doing the things that I want to do the way I want to do them as long as I can do them. And so that's how I have my physical activity routine set up these days. I think a big support here is peers. If you have a peer that's engaged in physical activity, ask them how they figured it out. What do you do? How do you adapt it? What resources did you use? Because that was a huge resource for me. As I started to get more competitive, I needed to find somebody that really sort of knew what was going on. And this was hard because I could find people that knew a lot about disability, or I could find people that knew a lot about sports and training, but I couldn't find somebody that knew both. And when I did, it was a game changer. So, you know, I don't sweat fully. And so when I'm on the track training or outside, I need a system for cooling down quickly. You can sort of see that picture on the slide. And I needed different ways to figure out how to train and be able to maximize the strength that I had without putting a lot of wear and tear on my shoulders, so I'm not causing issues down the road. And so we did a lot of problem solving to figure that out. So I just wanted to sort of wrap up in the next 3 or 4 minutes and tell you about some resources out there that have been helpful to me, that I've had a lot of my participants and clients use. The first one, and what I did for each of these resources was I actually took a picture of the website and put it on the page and then put the web link below. But the first one is just a great general resource. It's the National Council on Physical Activity and Disability. And if you go to that website, there's so many things on there. The picture on the right shows you can click on areas like programs or organizations and equipment and put in where you live. And then it's going to give you a list of programs or people that are certified in disability and inclusive training. So if you just don't know where to go, this resource is great. And additionally, has a ton of resources on there. That 14 weeks to a healthier you can click on that on the website, and it will ask you a bunch of questions about yourself and then give you 14 weeks of videos that you can do in your home for physical activity and strengthening exercises, depending upon what your goals were that you filled out on your intake. So again, just a ton of resources on here if you don't even know where to start. There's a big movement out there about accessible facilities that are available. We have one in the St. Louis, Missouri area called the Orthwine Center. It has a range of rehabilitation and exercise equipment and trained healthcare professionals, OTs and PTs, that guide people through exercise routines and sort of post-rehab routines, but there's a lot more through the country. There's one in Alabama, there's one in Colorado, there's one in Indiana, there's one in Georgia, there's one in Arizona. But if you're living someplace where you feel like you don't have access to this, contact these places like the Orthwine Center link. They actually have virtual programs. So they have group classes, but they have a Zoom format. So you can zoom in to the group classes. Or you can actually do some of the training sessions in your home on Zoom with one of the trainers. Adaptive sports, if you don't know where to start and you're interested in adaptive sports, whatever that looks like, it's bocce, it's archery, it's swimming, it's track and field, whatever it is, Move United is a great resource. And again, you can go on that website, tell them where you live, what activities you're interested in, and it will pull up the programs in your area. So if you put that you live in St. Louis, Missouri, you're going to get DASA, Disabled Athletes Sports Association, that pulls up. And this organization does recreational programs. It also has an accessible gym for working out and competitive team sports like rugby and wheelchair basketball. Equipment funding. So if you're interested in having your own equipment, health insurance companies, I've never seen a health insurance company reimburse for exercise or adaptive physical activity equipment. So this is a great resource. There's two great resources on here. One is Challenge Athletes Foundation, and the other is the Kelly Brush Foundation. So you apply to them with a grant and tell them what you want, what piece of equipment you want and why. And I've had my hand cycle reimbursed through the Challenge Athletes Foundation. And then the Kelly Brush Foundation is specifically for folks with spinal cord injury. And they do the same thing. Okay, I believe this is my last slide, but this is related to just having adaptations and accommodations and knowing where to go. Two of my go-to sites of where I go is Sport Aid on the right. Sport Aid's a little bit more general. They have all kinds of stuff on there, whether it's bowel and bladder related things, but they also have sports related equipment on there. A resource I've been using a lot lately is Handy Accessories. It was developed by a person with a spinal cord injury who's a quad, who's really physically active and has designed a bunch of this stuff. So on the bottom right, I use those grasp cuffs when I'm working out with different weights. They're fantastic if you don't have hand function, as well as the hook attachments work. I use those as well. So there's a lot of different things out there. Some of it's just a matter of sorting through it and finding it and figuring out how best it's going to work for you. So I'm going to sort of wrap it up there. I'm going to turn it over to MJ, but I am available to anyone at any time to answer questions offline or guide folks. And Linda, feel free to share these slides with anybody that's wanting to maybe look at the resources more in depth, but
Will do.
I'll stop there. And MJ, I'll turn it over to you. I'll stop sharing my slides.
Great. Linda, am I okay to go?
Yes, go right ahead.
Awesome. Well, Kerri, thanks for taking the lead there. I'm kind of excited to follow up because I think there's a lot of alignment between some of your work and some of this work I'm going to present, which maybe together would even be stronger and better for some people. Anyway, like Linda said, my name's MJ Mulcahey, and I have been an occupational therapist for over 30 years, primarily working with children and adolescents with spinal cord injury and other types of paralysis and their parents. And what's cool about working with kids and in pediatrics is that, you kind of grow up with the kids and the families, and you always are friends, lifelong friends. And what becomes really obvious when you work with kids and family members is that quickly you are no longer an expert. They are so much more experienced in their own disability and their own abilities and figuring out how to make it work in their lives for what they want to do, kind of what Kerri talked about. And so that's why I got very interested in coaching. And I'm going to share a little bit about our work we call our model coaching in context. And I just want to acknowledge the other occupational therapist I'm working with in this work. But I also want to highlight that coaching is not an occupational therapy centric approach. Other disciplines can. Am I sharing my slideshow? I don't think so, right?
Yes,
okay.
I can see
Great.
it.
Great. So first I wanted to define coaching. And so coaching is a conversation-based process that really is aimed to improve performance, whatever that performance and how that is defined by you or the person receiving the coaching. Coaching is focused on here and now rather than past and the future. And the goal of coaching is really to help people learn. It's really not intended to teach somebody or train somebody or provide rehabilitation. The goal is to help people learn. And so our model of coaching is called coaching in context, and it has three major components: connect, discover, and plan. And we'll talk about each of those components in a minute, but I just wanted to highlight that coaching in context is solution focused. So we want to develop problem solving skills to focus on solutions that best serve people's lives. It's anchored in positive psychology. And really all that means is that we leverage clients' strengths. We don't focus on weaknesses or limitations or problems. We're a strength-based approach to coaching. And coaching and client is 100% client driven. So our goal is to really foster a journey of self-discovery. And unlike other coaching models, namely health coaching, the client is the sole decision maker in coaching and context. There's no shared decision making. It's really all about the client and what they want. Coaching in context focuses on the person. their goal, and their context, or their lived human and non-human environment and everyday situations. So there's other methods to learning that most of us are familiar with. Mentoring, and I think Kerri alluded to find a peer mentor or find a mentor around physical activity, which is very useful, and counseling, which is core in rehabilitation. But there's important things that distinguish among these three approaches to learning. So in coaching, the expert and the person most knowledgeable is the client. The coach is not knowledgeable whatsoever, actually, in the content of coaching. In contrast, the mentor and the counselor and the therapist really bring the knowledge and the expertise to the relationship. The focus on coaching is now, the present, whereas mentoring is the future and counseling is the past. And I think importantly, the aim of coaching is to improve performance, again, in whatever one chooses to perform in, with an objective of growth. So we want a mindset growth, right? We want people growing, whereas mentoring focuses on developing specific goals that open horizons and doors for the future. And counseling focuses on overcoming psychological barriers to understand oneself better. I think what's really important, and what I think is really, really cool, is that, the outcomes of all three of these learning methods are really important for all of us, every one of us. So what isn't ideal for us to be always growing and our horizons are opening, and we have an ongoing appreciation of ourselves as we grow and as we change. And so the sweet spot to flourish is really the intersection among coaching, mentoring, and counseling. And one may want to be coached and focus on growth, or one may want to be mentored and focus on opening doors and horizons. And one may want to be focused on counseling to understand oneself, or one may want to be doing more than two, more than one. So that's what's really nice about these methods of how we learn. So I just wanted to quickly take a closer look at this model of coaching in context to kind of give you an idea of what it is and what it looks like. And so again, the first component is connect. And the purpose of that component of our coaching relationship is to really establish trust between the client and the coach, focus on what is most important, and just create a positive. Remember, this is grounded in positive, strength-based, psychology, and so we want a positive check-in. And I've listed some of the questions that a coach may ask you during the connect component of coaching in context. And again, it's to set the stage for the next step of the coaching process. I do want to just highlight that in our research studies, when we use coaching in context, the very first coaching session, we ask clients the following: what are the everyday activities that you want to do, need to do, or expected to do that are not getting done in the way you want or need? So it kind of resonates with what Kerri is saying about, physical activity and making sure you figure out what you do, how it works for you. From that question, we establish and prioritize activities for goals for coaching. And we ask clients to rate the coaching goals on a scale between 1 and 10, whereas 1, I cannot do it all and I'm very unsatisfied, and 10, I'm very satisfied and I can do it well. And, for those of you who are out there, this is the Canadian Occupational Performance Measure that we use for this piece. So the next component of coaching in context is the discover phase or component. And this is really where a lot of coaching happens. And the goal of discover component is to gain deeper awareness and new insights, recognize new opportunities, strengthen your own resourcefulness and problem solve, and really move to a place that you're ready to develop a plan and take action. And so if you are being coached within the coaching and context model and you're in the discover component, you may be asked by a coach questions such as, what's the upside of this problem? What have you learned from the situation? Who else benefits if you are successful? Why does it matter now? What if nothing changes? And so the coach is asking these simple, very simple, but very powerful questions that kind of encourage or facilitates the client to go on a self-discovery journey. I wanted to share a very short segment of a coaching session that was in the discovery component with a 26-year-old with a cervical spinal cord injury whose goal, coincidentally, was to improve fitness and the amount of time he exercised. So the coaching questions or comments are in the circles, and the participants' responses are in the squares. And I just want to quickly read through this so you get an idea of the type of discovery, self-discovery a client may have. So the coach says, last week we discussed some things that you want or need to do that you are not quite satisfied with right now. I wish I could exercise more, and I always want to improve my eating habits. And the coach says, which one is most important on your mind, or is there something else? Exercise is the most important right now. I exercise twice a week, but I would love to work at home at least 4 times a week. So the coach says, using positive psychology, congratulations, working out twice a week is a big accomplishment using your, considering your busy schedule. Exercise is obviously important. Thanks, I'm proud of myself for at least doing what I'm doing. If I could only do a bit more. What does a bit more look like to you? I don't know, like it would need to be home because I have to go to rehab facility to use the equipment designed for wheelchairs. And I need my dad to drive me and I can't get there on clinical days before it closes, the rehab closes. So exercise at home. Exactly, I have bands, adaptive weights at home, and my room is set up, so it's easy to do. Sounds like a great setup. It really is, and I can get a great workout. The problem is, I love going to the rehab gym. What is it about the rehab gym that you love most about it? Well, the equipment is amazing, but what I like most is that there is the accessibility in the people. Oh, you love to exercise, the equipment is accessible, and you also enjoy being around other people who work out there. Yes, that's exactly right. I can see why you like going to the rehab gym. Exercise, accessibility, and socialization. Of those, what is most important right now, or is it something else? And so again, this short segment just shows you that the coach is asking very simple questions, and the client is really working hard on a journey of self-discovery, really gaining new insights and awareness of what's important, what's going on. And so again, it's just a quick segment of discovery. The last component is what we call plan, and the plan component is designed to establish actions that are solution-focused, feasible, works for you in your own environment, and that's embraced. And so some questions are like, what is the first step you're willing to take? What strengths will you use to be successful? How will you know if you are successful? So I thought I would just let you see a few real coaching sessions. Can you hear?
I'm not getting sound.
Okay. I don't know why. There was just a coaching session. I could hear it. I'm not sure why it wasn't going through. But anyway, so now that I've described coaching in context, let me talk a little bit about our effort to build support, the evidence in support of coaching. And so we are studying coaching in context with adults who are living with spinal cord injury, parents of children with spinal cord injury, care partners of persons with newly acquired strokes, and college students with learning differences. So this graph I'll explain. So just if you give me 1 second. So this is the outcomes of coaching in context with the 41-year-old with the cervical spinal cord injury that he sustained 28 years ago. He participated in 10 60-minute coaching sessions over 10 weeks. And recall that at the very first session, we asked him to identify activities that he was having some problems with. And he identified nutrition, exercise, and budgeting as his goals for coaching. And remember, we asked in the first coaching session to rate your performance and satisfaction for each of your goals on a scale between 1, cannot do and very dissatisfied, and 10, performs without a problem and very satisfied. The light blue bars in each of these are the scores that the client gave before coaching. So nutrition was a 7 in terms of performance, a 6 in terms of satisfaction. He scored exercise performance and satisfaction as a 1, and budgeting performance a 6, and then satisfaction a 3. And what you could appreciate that he improved satisfaction in each of his goals, right? He improved his performance of exercise, and he remained unchanged in performance of nutrition and budgeting. Now, one may say, well, how can you improve in satisfaction if you didn't improve in your performance? Well, in coaching, we believe that the clients gain new insights, change their priorities, redesign their performance goals so that the performance goal is no longer as important. And in fact, they're satisfied with the new insights and the new insights and goals that they establish. And we see this repeatedly in some of our coaching data. These are coaching outcomes of 2 additional people with spinal cord injury, a 25-year-old and a 23-year-old with cervical spinal cord injuries. I listed out the coaching goals of these 2 individuals to give you an idea of what people are defining as their goals. So I want to stop asking for things that I'm capable of doing. I want to go out with my friends without parents. I want to be more independent in bladder. I want to take care of my pet. I want to exercise and find a hobby. So these are very relevant coaching goals. And you can see over here in the top graph, this is kind of busy, but the first bar is performance before coaching. The second bar is the performance after coaching. The third bar is satisfaction before coaching. And the fourth bar is satisfaction after coaching. And you could appreciate that we've seen improvement in performance and satisfaction in this individual, as well as this individual, except again, for the exercise performance score. But again, it just gives you a flavor of what people are reporting after coaching. This is our preliminary data on mothers of children with spinal cord injury. So we have coached 7 moms between 32 and 45 years of age who have children between 7 and 13 years of age with spinal cord injury. Each of the moms participated in up to 10 60-minute coaching sessions over 10 weeks. And together or collectively, they identified 31 coaching goals. And again, I just list not all 31, but just some of the goals to give you a flavor of what moms with kids with spinal cord injuries want to do, really relevant and things that we all want to do, right? So over in the graph, and I'll just orient you to this, we have baseline performance or before coaching performance scores. This is the mean or the average score of all those 31 goals. So you could see it's about around 4. And then after coaching performance scores improved up to around 7. Likewise, the average baseline satisfaction score was around a little over 4, and this improved up to a little bit above 7. And so the point here is that you see a performance improvement and improvement in satisfaction. The other thing that was really interesting is you could see that the baseline or before coaching scores really had wide range of variability from 1 to 8. And after coaching, it tightened up from 5 to 9, which was really cool. And that happened with satisfaction. And maybe, and we don't know, but it is plausible that moms, again, learned more about their goals and their satisfaction and had new insights and expectations for themselves. We're also conducting a study, a pilot study that actually is funded by the American Occupational Therapy Foundation on coaching and context outcomes with care partners of persons with new stroke. And this is these are the outcomes data for the first client, where before coaching, we have performance and satisfaction in the gray. Was a 5 average score. After coaching, right after coaching. It improved to 9, average score of 5 activities. And then what we're interested in is, does that performance and satisfaction sustain? Is it sustained after coaching relationships? So we followed up in 1 month and we saw that it in fact was sustained. We've enrolled, I think we've enrolled 12 more individuals in this study, but we're not analyzing or opening the data. We just wanted to open the data on the first one. So this is an active study. And then finally, and I think this is about my last slide, we are collecting qualitative data as well as some other data. I just only showed you one data set, but here's some qualitative statements from the college kids with learning differences that I think are really tell the story. So with coaching, I am more productive, proactive in getting my own things done. Coaching really had an overall positive impact academically, personally, and for my future career. Coaching helped me to put a perspective on things. With coaching, now I know what is preventing me from being successful and I can work around it. And the last one really, I think is pretty powerful because this is what we hope we do as coaches. It was great that my coach gave me the time and the opportunity to bounce ideas off and not just come up with solutions herself, because it helped to change my thinking pattern and learn to prioritize, which is a pretty powerful statement from a college age youth. So in closing, I gave you a quick snapshot only on our pilot data on coaching. We're also looking at cortisol levels to look at stress levels before and after coaching. We're looking at self-efficacy. We're looking at physical functioning. So our work is ongoing as we try to build evidence in support of this to help people flourish in their own lives. And again, I just really wanted to thank the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation and the American Occupational Therapy Foundation for creating the opportunity to share this space with Kerri and talk about our work and really honor people living with and affected by spinal cord injury and paralysis. And my email's right at the bottom as well.
Thank you to both of you. There's a lot of information to take in and digest. So we do have some questions. First of all, I was wondering, MJ, and you really alluded to it in your presentation, but when I was listening to the coaching exchange sample that you had there, I thought, could parents get involved in this? And I saw you had some data for 7 to 13-year-olds. Have you tried this with parents at all in different age groups, especially those adolescent years? That's where we get a lot of information where parents really struggle with their children if they have a disability or if they don't have a disability. Those are the tough years.
Linda, it's a great question. So we put the upper age to 13 because we are talking about when should we coach adolescents themselves, and or should we consider coaching, which we plan on studying, coaching dyads or the parent and the adolescent together. Can we coach them as a dyad and infuse coaching into our practice to work with them together as well as separate? So it's really an important question. We're so sensitive about getting parent-reported outcomes when we believe we should be getting child-reported outcomes, and just honoring that age group where adolescents really want to kind of bloom. But believe me, a mom of 3 adolescent girls, I probably could have used everything at that time, right?
That's what I was thinking. I thought, oh, I wish I could be so non-confrontational with my own children. That would be great. And then the next question I'll direct towards Kerri, and that is for a lot of our people in our community, they want to take advantage of athletic programs, but they don't know where to begin, or they think they need a special adaptive equipment and they don't have the funding to get that equipment. Now, recently, Planet Fitness has come out that they're bringing adaptive equipment into their general exercise component, which other facilities have adaptive equipment, but since Planet Fitness is doing this big announcement, they're kind of getting all the attention. So if you're an individual out in the community and say you don't have a athletic program, or maybe you don't have a physician that can rate you for the different athletic programs. I know you talked a bit about this in your program, but how would you go about finding a place or deciding what exercises you should be doing, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's sort of where to begin, right? And so I think it's really thinking about what motivates you, and in a perfect world, what you would want to be doing if you could do it. I think it's, if you have access to therapists, occupational therapists, having a conversation with them. I think it's having a conversation with your physician. I think it's looking in your area for what's available. And resources like NICPAD can help you with that. Move United can help you with that. But it's also, it's not easy. There's not one place you can go, right? And so what I would say is, if you find a place, even if it's not in your area, call them and ask them, do you serve people outside your area? Do you do it virtually? Do you know of any other places like you? Because we are a small community. We know what's sort of around us. So it sort of takes knowing what you want, and then sort of patience and persistence almost of sort of problem solving your way through, okay, whatever it is, I really want to be involved in hand cycling, but there's no organizations around me. Sometimes there's more things than you think there are. I think a lot of people in St. Louis don't know, at our major public parks, at the tourist centers, we have a recreational council that's placed hand cycles there for people to go rent and try out. And I don't think many people know that. So there's sort of more things than you know sometimes. And so I would start with some of the major resources that I had on the slides, talk to them, talk to other peers. But I think the more people you can talk to, you'll eventually sort of come upon information that I think is helpful for you. So sorry, that's not an easy answer. But that's I think the more people you talk to, the more that you'll learn.
But I don't think there is an easy answer. As you say, it's a little bit different for everybody. And I have to put a plug in here that the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation does have a peer mentoring program that is quite wonderful, gets a lot of good positive feedback from people who take advantage of that. So they will connect you with somebody in your community or around your community with concerns and issues that may be similar to yours. So like you say, the more people you can contact and talk to, there's probably somebody else who's already kind of gone down this path, and they can tell you about things that you're like, whoa, I didn't know that hand cycling was available. What a wonderful thing to be able to try out some equipment and see if you like it before you get into it. And I also, as Nurse Linda, I have to say, check with your healthcare professional before you get really involved in some exercise program to make sure your bones are strong enough, that your body isn't too deconditioned. And remember that when you start your exercise program, that you might not feel discomfort and the aches and pains of using muscles that you haven't used for a while, but your body still will react to it. Those muscles will still react to it. And so sometimes people think, well, nothing's hurting me. I'll just go ahead and do this for an hour and a half. And they have other kinds of problems that come up because they overdid it. So all those things, still pertain no matter what. We have a question from a person, and either one of you can address this, is training as an occupational therapist and art therapist. She wants to know how she can assist individuals to sustain skills to their body, to improve their minds, to lift and regain a power of self-control.
Wow.
I know that's a great question.
That's a really good question and a great thing to think about. I'm not sure I have a great answer. MJ, do you have a thought?
Yeah. Lynn, do you mind just reading that again real quickly?
Yes, I kind of consolidated a bit. It says, I'm an educator of training as an occupational therapist and art therapist, writing about focus, how can we assist individuals to sustain this skill to express themselves as their body improves so that they can gain a sense of power of self-control. So it's really a question about maintaining self-control as you're trying to increase your function.
I think it's a lot related to self-efficacy too, and potentially self-management, teaching self-management skills potentially so that people don't get overwhelmed and feel like they have the skills to manage their own journey. I think early on it is extremely overwhelming. So I don't know, MJ, I almost think coaching could be a place.
Yeah, I mean, and again, the sweet spot is this, intersection of counseling, mentoring, and coaching, right? And so it all comes together in that sweet spot. But I think coaching, if it's the right thing for the person, could absolutely work with that. I also think it's all about, one size doesn't fit all, and every one of us, regardless of what abilities we have, our needs change, our functions change, and we never do the same thing over and over again without changing it a bit up to make it work for the time that we need it to work. So I think it's about learning that too, that we may teach certain methods in rehabilitation and in occupational therapy, but the real art is taking what maybe you learn in rehab and going home and making it work in your own home environment for yourself, and being a little bit forgiving that maybe it's not the perfect way that you were taught, but if it works for you, then it's perfect.
That's right. It's perfect for you if it works for you.
Perfect for you.
Here's a very OT question. I can't clip my own finger and toenails. What can I use to help me gain independence?
Well, Linda, you talked about what you saw at that conference, right?
Well, yes. I saw this device. It's not very expensive. I think it costs $20 or $30. I think it was $20 then, but it probably has gone up, and it's about maybe like this big around. And so it's big that you can pick it up, and there's like this little slit, and you put your finger in there, and it just neatly clips your fingernails in one fell swoop. And I have to say, when I thought, well, I don't know if I want to stick my finger in this thing. It's just your nail that goes in. Your finger can't get in there. But I thought, that's kind of creepy. I don't know, but I tried it. And once I tried it and it worked, I thought, this is the most wonderful gadget I've ever seen in my life. So I highly recommend it. It was really cool.
And Linda, I just wanted to comment, and it's not about cutting your fingernails and toenails. And Kerri, I'd be curious what your perspective is on this, but so often and traditionally in rehab, we always are pushing for independence. And, none of us are really totally independent of other people. It's more about interdependence and finding how to be okay with, other people helping you out when you need it and for things that, you may need. We all do that. None of us are truly independent. It's kind of a silly notion, isn't it?
Kind of sort of is, because us really are independent completely, and everything. We depend on others for all sorts of things. I do. Do you have any tips for lower body dressing for non-traumatic spinal cord injury?
Man, I tell you, I just trying to think from my own personal perspective. When I've been doing it for so long, it's almost hard for me to sort of break it down. And this isn't something that I typically do in my everyday practice anymore. So I'm a little removed from it. So I think one of the tips for me that is really helpful is the clothing that I select and the sizing that I select to make it easier to get on and off, and to something that can accommodate sitting all day long and still be comfortable but still look good. So I think there's a balance there to clothing selection. I'll also say that there's companies now that are actually making adapted clothing more accessible. So Tommy Hilfiger and Target are just a couple examples, but are making clothing with different sort of adaptations to it. And I kind of do a combination. I really find getting dressed is easier in my chair. So I do it from my wheelchair, but again, people are different on this. So, but those are just some initial thoughts. And then a comment on MJ and Linda, your comment. So I've tried all different kinds of things for nail cutting, and I teach assistive technology in the OT class. So I'm big on assistive technology, and I could not find anything that didn't frustrate the heck out of me. And so that is one thing that I sort of prioritize. I have somebody help me because they can do it in 2 seconds. And it's me fussing around with this piece of equipment and trying to get it right. So it is, I sort of go through my day prioritizing, okay, what do I want to be independent in, and what is going to work for me? And then what am I going to feel okay asking somebody to do, which I don't feel like is a burden. So I do think there's give and take there.
Well, and I see somebody wrote in on the comment section that they use those larger nail files for artificial nails, and that works great for her. But I think as MJ made the comment, and Kerri, in response to your comment, you dress in your chair. Many people are taught to dress in their bed, and so they dress in their bed. And so as MJ says, what is the right way for you is the right way to do it. So sometimes a little experimentation, if you need to have somebody stand by when you try something new, just to make sure you're not slipping out of your chair, or, make sure you don't get injured in some sort of way, but a little bit of experimentation. So sometimes if you think, well, I would like to try this, think, well, why not? And give it a try. So that really concludes our hour right on the button. And I would like to thank both of you very much for these insightful presentations. To our listeners, know that this will be posted on the YouTube channel, so you'll be able to get that information if you weren't sure. I know this would be a really helpful session to maybe listen to a couple of times, because there were so many nuggets of good information in here. So I'd like to thank you both, MJ and Kerri, for being on here. It's been a wonderful day. I know our audience probably has enjoyed this immensely. And I'll tell you, on a personal note, I will be seeing you at the Steel Conference in December. So I don't know if you're going, but I know.
Fantastic. It's going to be on site.
It's a pediatric conference in Orlando. It'll be my first venture out of the COVID. So fingers crossed.
That's fantastic. It's going to be a great meeting.
Yeah, it will be a good one. So remember also that I am online tonight. It's my night, 7 o'clock East Central Time, from 7 to 8. I'm live online. You can type in your questions, or if you want, you can type in a question anytime. I answer them between 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock on Wednesday nights, but I'm on there live. So if you want to have a back and forth type conversation, we can do that on the Reeve community site. So thank you very much. And we've enjoyed having you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.